Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video we will be looking at AQA AS Psychology 2022 Paper 1 Exemplar Answers for Memory, which you need to know for AQA A-Level Psychology. I hope you enjoy this video and find it helpful. Let's get started. Please note that these answers have been produced with knowledge of the mark scheme but have not been approved by the mark scheme themselves. There are 3 assessment objectives, AOs, in psychology. In this video they are color-coded. AO1 Knowledge, purple. AO2 Application, blue. AO3 Evaluation, red and green. In AS there are 12 mark questions, instead of 16 mark questions. For the purpose of this video and to avoid confusion for A-Level, the 12 mark questions have been turned into 16 mark questions. A researcher investigated the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. Whilst students were listening to a lecture, they saw a man steal a bag from the floor at the front of the lecture hall. In condition A, 10 students were asked individually to estimate the man's height in meters. In condition B, 10 other students took part in a group discussion about what they had seen. They were then asked individually to estimate the man's height in meters. Question 1. Identify the experimental design used in this study. Justify your answer. 2 marks. The experiment design is independent groups because different participants were used in each condition. Question 2. Identify the operationalized dependent variable in this study. 2 marks. The operationalized dependent variable is estimated height of thief in meters. Question 3. Explain why the data in this study is primary data. 2 marks. The data in this study is primary data because it is original data obtained and collected directly first-hand from the participants or source by the researcher themselves, specifically for the purpose of the investigation being carried out into eyewitness testimonies, without relying on previously collected data. Question 4. A week later, the same students were asked to describe the man's facial features, estimate his age in years and weight in kilograms. Identify the qualitative data collected by the researcher. Justify your answer. 2 marks. The qualitative data collected by the researcher is the description of the man's facial features because it uses words to give a full description of the man's facial features. Question 5. Briefly evaluate retrieval failure as an explanation for forgetting. 4 marks. A strength of retrieval failure as an explanation of forgetting is that there is research to support retrieval failure having more validity than interference theory. Tulving and Sotka, 1971, showed how interference effects occurred due to the absence of any cues to aid retrieval. Participants were given word lists to remember with one condition having category headings and another without. In conditions without category headings, fewer words were recalled than when headings were present, showing the information was available but simply unable to be accessed due to the absence of cues. This is a strength because it suggests that retrieval failure provides a more accurate explanation for forgetting than interference theory, as it highlights the critical role of cues in accessing stored information. The findings from Tulving and Sotka's research indicate that memory retrieval can be significantly enhanced by providing appropriate cues, reinforcing the idea that forgetting may often be a result of insufficient retrieval aids rather than the loss of information itself. A limitation of retrieval failure as an explanation of forgetting is that Tulving's encoding specificity principle is not falsifiable and therefore lacks scientific credibility. Baddeley, 1997, criticized the encoding specificity principle as impossible to test and verify for certain, making it unscientific. If a cue aids retrieval, then it could be argued to have been encoded in the memory. However, if it does not, then it could be argued that it wasn't encoded in memory as a cue. This is a limitation because it suggests that the encoding specificity principle may not provide a clear and testable framework for understanding memory retrieval. The lack of falsifiability means that it cannot be definitively proven or disproven, which undermines its scientific credibility and raises concerns about its reliability as an explanation for forgetting. This ambiguity can lead to confusion in interpreting research findings related to memory and retrieval processes. Question 6. Describe and evaluate the multi-store model of memory. 16 marks. The multi-store model, MSM, was proposed by Atkinson and Shiffrin in 1968. It was the first attempt to create a theoretical model of human memory and described memory of linear process with 3 unitary stores. The model suggested that memory is made up of 3 components: sensory register, SR, short-term memory, STM, and long-term memory, LTM. According to the model, memories are formed sequentially and information passes from one component to the next, in a linear fashion. Each of the 3 components has specific type of coding: the way in which information is changed and stored in memory, capacity, the amount of information that can be stored, and duration, the length of time that information is held in the memory. Information enters the sensory register, which is not under cognitive control, from the environment via our senses. Everything we hear, see, touch, taste, and smell. Our sensory register has an unknown but supposedly unlimited capacity and a very limited duration of between 1/20th second to 2 seconds, approximately 250 milliseconds, Sperling 1960, before the trace decays and is forgotten. The SR allows information to be retained long enough to allow a decision as to whether it is worth processing further. Information enters from all 5 senses. The coding is modality-specific and said to be raw, or unprocessed, information. There are 2 common types of sensory memory that can be researched: vision, visual memory, iconic memory, and hearing, auditory sensory memory, echoic memory. Information that is attended to is passed to STM, where it is temporarily stored. Information in our STM arrives in a raw form, sound or vision. It is then encoded into a form that STM can more easily deal with. Information can be coded visually, eyesight, and semantically, meaning, but is mainly coded acoustically, hearing, Baddeley 1966. Information is still vulnerable to being forgotten due to limited duration, decay, or being displaced by new incoming information due to limited capacity, displacement, and therefore a rehearsal loop can be undertaken to keep the memory trace active by continually reinserting it into the STM rehearsal loop, repeating the information over and over again in your head. STM has a limited capacity of 7+/-2 chunks of information, meaning 5 to 9 items. Miller, 1956 plus Jacobs, 1887. STM has a limited duration of approximately 20 to 30 seconds, after which the memory decays. Peterson and Peterson, 1959. If a longer, more elaborative and purposeful period of rehearsal takes place, then the memory can be transferred to the long-term memory, LTM, where memories are theoretically only temporarily inaccessible due to retrieval failure and interference. Information can be retrieved from LTM through information passing back through STM. LTM has an unlimited capacity and a lifetime's duration. Barrick 1975. Information in LTM is coded semantically, by meaning, Baddeley 1966, and can be retrieved from LTM to STM when required. A strength of the MSM is that there is an extensive amount of research to support the different components of the MSM. For example, research by Miller, 1956, supports the idea that our STM has a capacity of 7+/-2 chunks of information. Baddeley, 1966, supports the notion of different types of encoding in STM and LTM. Peterson and Peterson, 1959, support the idea of a limited duration in STM, and Barrick, 1975, supports the idea of an unlimited duration in LTM. This is a strength because it suggests that the multi-store model is well-founded on a substantial body of research, reinforcing the validity and reliability of its various components. The amount of diverse studies provide a strong empirical basis for understanding how memory functions across different stages, enhancing our comprehension of cognitive processes. A strength of the multi-store model is that there is case study evidence to support the distinction between STM and LTM. Chalice and Warrington, 1970, carried out a case study of patient KF, who was injured in a motorcycle accident. Following his accident, KF could recall stored information from his LTM, however KF had a severely impaired STM. This is a strength because this dissociation suggests that STM and LTM are separate distinct systems. However, KF had a severely impaired STM, particularly for verbal, acoustic, information, when KF read digits himself, compared to visual information, when someone else read digits to KF, suggesting selective impairment and indicating that different types of information may be processed and stored differently within STM. This is a limitation because it suggests that STM may not be as unitary as the model proposes. Instead, it indicates that there could be multiple subsystems within STM that handle different types of information, such as verbal and visual data, separately. However, KF's case challenged MSM of memory, which posited that information must pass through STM to reach LTM. KF's intact LTM despite impaired STM suggested alternative pathways for information storage. This is a limitation because it suggests that the linear progression from STM to LTM, as proposed in MSM, may not fully capture the complexity and flexibility of how information is processed and stored in memory systems. A strength of MSM is that there is brain scan evidence to show that there are different areas of the brain active when performing STM and LTM tasks. The hippocampus and subiculum have been found to be active when performing STM tasks, and the motor cortex has been found to be active when performing LTM tasks. The hippocampus being found to be involved in transferring short-term memories into long-term memories. This is a strength because it suggests that the MSM's framework has a biological basis with neurological evidence supporting the idea that different brain regions are specialized for different memory functions, which reinforces the model's validity. A limitation is that research supporting the MSM use artificial materials. For example, researchers often asked participants to recall digits, letters, and sometimes words. In everyday life we form memories related to all sorts of useful things: people's faces, their names, facts, places, etc. This means that although research findings may reflect how memory works with meaningless material in lab testing, it does not reflect how memory works in everyday life. This is a limitation because it suggests that the research findings may not accurately represent how memory functions in our daily lives, as people tend to remember more meaningful and relevant information. This discrepancy challenges the generalizability of the model to real-world memory processes and highlights the need for further research that considers a broader range of memory contexts and stimuli. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content like this. Bye.